It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution. This is the place where we have no politics, no sports, and no mean people. That's why I have sitting next to me from the world headquarters of the Remodel Revolution, from deep in the heart of the great state of Texas, right here with me in this studio, Poonam Patel. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. It's nice to have sweetness on the set. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I have my celery juice. I'm hydrated.
Celery juice.
I'm on a new celery juice kick.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't know how to respond to celery juice. I'm an orange juice kind of guy.
Try it.
We have got a fantastic show today. We have Randy Hargrave with Hargrave and Hargrave Foundation. We're going to talk about how what you need to be doing right now on your foundation during the dry part of the summer. Now, I called Randy and I said, Randy, I really want to talk to the audience about how to take care of their foundation during the driest part of the year. And he said, why didn't you call me 2 months ago? Also, we have Daniel Gorham from the IBHS. IBHS is an organization that does a lot of studies, and they deconstruct houses. All of these things that happen in hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. And today we're going to talk about wildfires with Daniel and how to protect the outside of your house from a fire, which is going to be quite interesting. And then, of course, we have Poonam's Pandemic Projects, Part 2. And today we're going to Poonam is going to talk to us about doing an outdoor personal area, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. So let's get started. And we've got Randy Hargrave holding anxiously. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Alex.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So we get to this point in the summer when we've had weeks and weeks of dry weather, and a lot of times people don't think about how the ground is moving and drying up and affecting their foundation until they see the damage that it causes. What is the first sign that you look for when a homeowner calls you and tells you they think they may have damage from their foundation moving?
Well, this time of year, the first thing we do is we walk up and I just glance at the ground around the front door, on each side of the door, see how far it's pulled away, see if they've been watering, see if they've been taking care of the drainage and have their soaker hoses out, because it will separate from the foundation at that point right next to it, maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And if they've been watering properly starting in June, we tell everybody to start watering in June, then that dirt should be pushed up against the foundation at that time.
And sort of it supports it on the side, and it also creates where the dirt doesn't allow the foundation to move up and down.
Right. So if they've been watering it's up against it, then we know that the moisture's still holding at that point. But when there's a little crack, even in a 1/2 inch, then you got that crack of dirt all the way down to the bottom of the grade beam, 9 times out of 10. And it's going to let the air breathe, and air, just like a weep hole, air goes through the weep hole. It's going to go down beside that foundation, and it's going to continue drying through the base of the foundation, the underneath the ram, and it will undermine it, and then that will dry out, and then that's what causes.
Let's talk a little bit, and we talk about this a lot, you and I do, over the years, about how moisture at a certain time of the year, the moisture gets pulled out from underneath the foundation.
Right.
Let's talk about that.
That's go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's exactly right. Usually we tell people to start watering in June, because if you wait till July and August, when you see that crack, then what happens is during the winter and the spring, the moisture that we get from our rain will migrate and wick its way down to the bottom of the slab of the grade beam, and it keeps it holding. But if you wait till July and August when you see that crack, then all that moisture is going to be dissipated, and you got to try to stop it from moving no more. And it's going to take a while to get it back down, 14, 18, 24 inches. So you've got to get that moisture down there and start watering in June, middle of June, 30, 40 minutes. We tell them at night, put a timer on your soaker hose 12 inches away from the house and run it from like 11 to 11:30 in the night. That way it'll percolate and it'll go down. Water sprinklers are good for the surface, for your shrubs and grass, but after a while it won't percolate so fast and water just runs off.
Well, and that's interesting you brought that up, because that was one of my questions. I get this a lot from homeowners when I look at houses. I know you do too, and they're telling me they're having problem, or I'll say, well, you need to water your foundation. They go, well, I got my yard sprinkler, it's working fine.
Yeah. That's
No,
true.
That's not what it's
the first
for.
thing they say.
Yeah.
Well, I've been running my water sprinkler. Well, that's good for your shrubs and your grass, because the way the water sprinklers work, they kick on, they stay too long, water runs off. It's like putting water in a pot plant. When it's dry, you put water and keep pouring water, it's going to soak for a half inch to an inch, and then all of a sudden it's going to come up and run over the top. Then you stop and you let it soak in, right? That's the way water sprinklers do. They cover the top and then they start running off. And how many times have you drove down the road and you see water running out of the yard, across the curb, down the side of the street from a water sprinkler?
That's interesting, because I've always, of course, thought, well, they're watering too much. But what you're saying is maybe not watering too much, maybe watering too late. Yeah,
too late, because the water's coming in so fast that it can't absorb it as fast as it's coming in, so it runs off.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you get that winter and spring rains, it gets below the grade beam. You start watering in June through October till we get our rains again. Then that up there, plus your water sprinkler, kind of acts like a sacrificial lamb, so to speak, and it protects that moisture down there. So when the sun hits it, it don't suck it out like a sponge, and it'll pull it right out. But if that water's on the top and that surface stays dry, wet enough, then it's going to protect that moisture below it.
And the thing is, if you wait until this time of year or later to start this process, you're trying to play catch up.
You are really playing catch up. Now, I've had a couple of people that would do it, but they live out where the water wasn't restricted out in the country, and they would just turn their soaker hose on and leave it for 5 or 6 hours. I mean, walking in there in water, just standing. And then I tell them to shut it off, let it do it. But if you'll put it on a timer and do it, start in June, run it through September. Now, if we get a lot of rain, well, we're getting the rain. Well, if you don't get rain for 4 or 5 days, you better start soaking in June.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, I lived in a house out in the country and on some property, and we had that old black clay. And you could break your ankle walking through the yard, stepping in the cracks.
Because our PVR is from 2 to 3 inches up to 8 to 9 inches in the Metroplex.
Now, what is that? What are you
that's your potential vertical rise.
And that's how much the soil will expand.
Yes, sir. That soil. We live out in the Blackland Prairie. Well, the Blackland Prairie runs between 45 and 35, all the way from about where I live in Farmersville, all the way down to Bastrop nearly. And the soil, you get these, because I live on a farm, you can get these sun cracks that are 6 to 8 inches wide, and then after a good spring rain or a good rain in like September, October, you go back out there and you don't even know where the crack was.
Well, and that's when you see all the rabbits and gophers come up, because they start closing up.
That's right. Yeah. Everything falls in it and comes out.
So one day I had a big old crack in the dirt around the house, and I realized that I needed to do a little catch up. So I stuck the hose down there. I didn't have a soaker hose. I just stuck the hose down there. I started running water, and I thought, well, I'll just fix this, right? And I went in and watched a football game, and went
That's
back
right.
to go to the bathroom that next to where I was doing this, and there was water on the floor. And I went, why is that water on the floor?
Well, the worst thing people can do, I love it when they say, well, I put a water hose in that crack and I turned it on. Well, out in the country, when I get my a leak in my line, I have my get my backhoe out and I dig, and that crack may go 6, 7, 8 feet deep.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. Well, you're not going to fill that crack up with water hose in it. It's not going to happen. You're really just wasting your time and water and money.
Yeah.
You want that slow soak and just let it just migrate down in there. And then in the morning, if you want to turn your sprinkler systems on, turn them on. That'll just help. But do not soak your foundation during the heat of the day, because as slow as it sweats those hoses, then it's going to evaporate just about as fast. When it's 102, 103 degrees, you're really wasting your time and money. So do it at night, get a timer, set it. And right now, if you wanted to try to do catch up, you better do it more than 30 to 40 minutes a night. I'd run it maybe an hour, hour and a half every night.
Wow.
And then go ahead and run your sprinkler systems in the morning. But you're not using that much water, because the black soaker hoses, or if you've got the money and you want to put a drip irrigation in, make sure that drip irrigation is sufficient, because a lot of those, they put them right under the soil. You can even take your soaker hose and bury it 2 or 3 inches deep.
Mm-hmm.
That way you don't have to move it every time you mow. That's just as good. It's just as cheap, and just work it that way. But if you do the drip irrigation, you better make sure that it does come on and you're getting enough drip. Don't do it. You got to do your drip more than just 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something you got to do to catch up. I've seen them do it. You can play catch up, but it's really hard.
Okay.
Especially this time of year.
Randy, we really appreciate you coming on and spending time
You're
with us
welcome.
this morning. It's been really, really interesting. And how do people get in touch with you?
They can call us on our phone is 972-442-3415, or they can go to our website of Hargrave Foundation.
It's on the screen. You're lucky.
It's on the screen. I don't see it on my screen, Alex. I'm sorry.
It's okay, brother. It's
There
okay.
it is. Hargrave at Hargrave Foundation Repair.com. And we give free estimates. We're a family-owned business. Like we've been in business. My dad started our company in the Metroplex. We didn't move down from Oklahoma or come up from Houston or San Antonio. We are born and bred right here in the Metroplex, and we started in 1968, which that means my birthday's dirt.
Long time.
Dirt. I'm just dirt. Yeah. I don't even list the birthday no more. I just write dirt.
Well, and I've worked with Hargrave Foundation many times over the years, and I call them because they're absolutely honest, and I don't have to worry about. In fact, I've had your people tell me more times than not, you don't even need foundation repair. They just need to water the foundation. And so I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much, Randy. I appreciate you coming on. Have a great day, buddy. It's good to see you.
You too, man.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to visit with Daniel Gorham with IBHS. The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. I called IBHS a few years ago because I saw a video of somebody built a house in a big warehouse, built a house, a regular 1-story house, and then they blew it apart with fans, like to smithereens. And I went, What a great company. I'd like to work with these guys. And it ends up that it's IBHS organization, and he'll have to tell us what it stands for because it's very confusing to me. But I want to introduce Daniel Gorham from IBHS, and we're going to talk about wildfires. But first, kind of tell us about the organization, Daniel. You need to get your mic on. No, I still don't have you.
Daniel, we're not, if you want to hop off the call and come back while we, you know.
We're having a technical issue. Well, so what IBHS does, they actually will build a house and then they will actually destroy it, and then they will come up with a building system. They have a building system called fortified building, and it is a way for builders to reinforce houses to withstand extreme weather conditions, and one of which, of course, is hurricanes and tornadoes. That's really what their model is. And then they take these technologies that they develop, and they actually work with insurance companies to help builders and insurance companies design ways to build a better, safer home. And so, is he back? He's back. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, can you hear me
There,
now?
there. Got you, brother. Got you,
All
got
right,
you.
I'm
How
doing
are you?
good,
I
yeah.
think I explained that okay. I don't know if you were able to hear it. Tell us about IBHS.
Sure thing, yeah. And again, good morning to everyone tuning in. So IBHS is an acronym for the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. We are a nonprofit organization supported and funded by the insurance industry. So that includes primary carriers, reinsurers, and the industries that support them. And the work that we do at IBHS really focuses on catastrophe type incidents and events. So as you talked about there, Alex, we think about our core four perils. That's wind-driven rain, high winds, hail, and wildfire. And you can think of natural hazard events like tornadoes and hurricanes, severe convective storms, and wildland urban fires.
And your position with them, you're a research engineer.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I came and joined IBHS in 2018. I come from a fire service and fire protection engineering background. So most of my work focuses on wildfire. And as a research engineer, my role kind of is the full range of planning and conducting experiments and collecting that data. And then because our work is in support of the insurance industry, it's not just publishing peer-reviewed papers in the academic sense. In a lot of ways, it's taking the work that we do and having real-world impact. So that's communicating that to home and business owners, people that can do things in a retrofit or new build to make their buildings more resilient.
And I've looked at your system. I've looked at the fortified building system, and it's super, super impressive. And a lot of what you all have developed has integrated itself into building codes, particularly on coastal, the Gulf Coast in particular, because of the hurricanes, but also in Tornado Alley where I live. So I get the pleasure of having the the Gulf Coast hurricanes down south of me, and I'm smack dab in the middle of Tornado Alley. So we're real sensitive to these things. But one of the reason I wanted to visit with you today was the wildfire issue. And I thought about this because I have a friend that builds a lot of houses, and there's a lot of development right now going on in North Texas out in rural areas. It's pretty stunning, actually, how people have bought. There's a lot of staycation type building going on right now, and people are building out in places where they have a lot of acreage. And we do have grass fires, and we have some forest fires, depending on what part of the state you're in. But one of the other things that you talk about is safety around the house. So if you have a large backyard and you have a play area and things like that, you have some recommendations for keeping that safe from fire.
Yeah, sure. And I guess maybe I'll just kind of put some wildfire in the context.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. I think a lot of people perceive forest fires or wildland fires of what we might see on the nightly news, and that's typically in California and the other Western states, the big walls of flames, and you get this 30-second blurb on the nightly news, and that's about it. But the reality is vegetation fires are very natural, and many ecosystems have evolved to need them. That includes the forest, but that also includes the brush and grass fires that you see there in Texas. So those ecosystems have evolved to need the fire. And then what you talked about, that we as humans are starting to kind of sprawl out from urban centers and live and build in these areas that have adapted and evolved to have fire. We kind of have a little bit of that conflict. So that's where we talk about the wildland urban interface, where there's this mix between fires naturally happening in the vegetation, whether it's trees, forests, or grasslands, and where humans live, that's the homes and businesses. So, and then you're absolutely right. So while wildland and vegetation grass fires are natural phenomena, the resulting disasters that we have seen aren't necessarily a guarantee. And there are things that communities can do, individual homeowners can do, business owners can do, both to their building and the property around it, that can make them more resilient when a fire happens. They can come back to the structure still.
A lot of North Texas is still old. All of it was built on what we call blackland prairie. Originally, this was just a giant prairie with tons of tall grass, and we had naturally had fires during the summer when we have heat lightning. Of course, now we've built houses on all those places, but from time to time, and this is the time of year it happens, there's certain parts of our area that get these just massive grass fires. And people think of grass fire, they're thinking, oh, it's just a little bitty flame traveling along the ground. It looks pretty harmless, Tell us really what a grass fire is.
Yeah, so you're right, and there are lots of instances where grass fires can be small and kind of innocuous things. They're something that you just pass by. What happens is, and you talk about the fuels that are there, this is the time of year they start to dry out. It's hot and not humid, and they get all the moisture sucked out of them. So when there is ignition, they can burn very rapidly. And then you combine that with typical winds that you might see across those kind of plains. The winds start driving the fire spread. They give it the oxygen that it needs, and they can make it spread faster. And then the really important thing, and this is true for forest fires and grass fires, is it's not just the fire front. It's when things start burning, they release these embers or firebrands, and they can actually travel ahead of the fire front and cause little spot fires. And then you're not just seeing this wall of flames, you're kind of having this hopscotch effect. So, right, a small little brush fire, when you see it at its ignition point, may not be a big deal, but it starts to build up some steam, starts to burn into heavier fuels, gets enough energy, and starts lofting those embers up front, and we can see, very big fires doing a lot of destruction. And
it does. And when you're talking about grass fires in rural areas, you're talking about, thousands of acres. They're huge. They get really big, and they get hard to get under control because there's so much ground to cover, and you're not driving down a paved road to get to it. It's a wild fire. So let's talk about around the house. What are your recommendations to make your house safe from a fire?
Sure, and I'll start using some terms and terms that some people may be familiar with or maybe the first time. But right, I talked about the house or the building, the primary structure. That's what we don't want to ignite and get destroyed by the fire. And then there are the things around it. So that's the vegetation, that's the natural vegetation, that's, the grasslands that your property abuts. But that's also the things that you put in your yard, your ornamental vegetation. Maybe you have a nice tree, maybe you have stacks of firewood where you use that to heat in the winter. Maybe you have the kids play jungle gym, stuff like that. So that's all stuff that we would consider in defensible space. You have the primary structure, that's the thing we're hardening, and then you have the area around it, defensible space. You may be familiar, or your audience may be familiar with this idea of zones of defensible space. We sometimes talk about up to 30 feet away from or 100 feet away from the property, and that's broken into zones where we have the first zone where it's really close to the house, sometimes 5 feet away. The second zone, it's about 30 feet out, and the third zone can be up to 100 or 200 feet out. And what we're talking about doing in that space is not making it bare soil. We're not making that, a barren wasteland. We could have fuels there, but the idea is that if those fuels were to ignite, say by those embers that are traveling from the fire, they don't carry fire continuously to the home or to the building. So the idea of defensible space is you want to have, it's okay to have some fuels there, but you want to space them out and you want to select them in such a way that they don't carry fire to the house. The other part of that is maintaining them, and we can talk about that.
So, I mean, if you have those fuels and you're keeping them moist, you're watering your yard or whatever. Now, here's what if I just put a nice big moat around my house, like, 10-foot wide moat with alligators. And so let's talk about the defense. I guess Poonam didn't even laugh at that one.
Well, I was thinking about the foundation.
Oh,
it would be quite hydrated.
I'm thinking defensive measures. Okay.
But right, yeah. So like, use your moat. That is going to likely stop any of the brush fire from spreading up to the home. That's going to be a good thing there. But what that's not going to do is that's not going to stop the embers that can get lofted up in the air and travel over that 10-foot moat. We've seen embers travel up to miles ahead of the fire front. So yeah, that moat idea may do you some good, and it might help keep the foundation plenty hydrated. But it's not the whole deal.
But a lot of house fires used to, a big problem we used to have when we had wood roofs was the embers. I mean, I've seen entire neighborhoods go up because of that. So I totally get it. You're absolutely right about that. And so are we talking about also building materials?
Oh yeah, very much so. And the building materials that you have. So building materials, things like the siding choices, the window choices, the vents and other types of openings like doors, pedestrian doors or garage doors. All of those things matter. You talked about the roof, the roof covering. We know that combustible roof coverings like wood shingles are very much susceptible to ignition from those embers when they land on. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a twofold factor. The roof is kind of horizontal, when something's falling from the sky, it's really easy for it to land on there, so you're gonna accumulate the embers. And then two, if that material is combustible, like wood, right, enough embers start to accumulate there, they ignite that. And then what we talked about, these fires can be spreading in really large areas and maybe taxing firefighters and other response units. So someone might not be able to come in while it's a small fire to start, can spread very rapidly.
Right. So what is your best advice for somebody that just wants to look around their house, walk around the outside and see if they're, well protected? Sure.
So first thing that I would do is I would kind of look from the top down at the primary structure, look at your house or look at your business. Start at the roof. Is there a combustible roof covering? So do you have wood shingles on your roof? If that's what case you're in, I would really prioritize that and see what your options are to replace that with something more fire resistant. The asphalt shingles are very common for houses, and they typically get the highest fire resistance rating, Class A. So asphalt shingles are good. It's not also just the building materials, it's what might accumulate on them. So periodically you want to go outside and maybe you have a tree that overhangs your house. It's going to drop pine needles and leaves on there. So you want to see if debris is accumulated, and you want to prioritize clearing that off. That's the roof. That's kind of those intersections at the valleys and the dormers, and really especially in the gutter area. Mm-hmm. You want to periodically clear that out, because all those places where debris accumulates is where embers accumulate. And when those two combine is when you start to get fire.
That's fantastic. Daniel, we really appreciate, we're out of time. I really appreciate you coming in or coming on with us today, and tell people what they need to do, where they need to go to get this information.
Absolutely. You can get this information and lots more very consumer friendly at our website, disastersafety.org/wildfire. Again, that's disastersafety.org. There's lots of infographics and more information that they can find out there about what they can do in retrofit and around their home.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been very, very interesting.
My pleasure. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Imagine this, a totally customized and organized and beautiful master closet. Imagine a pantry designed specifically for your garage needs, your storage needs. an office that fits right into a perfect space, a garage that you can actually park your car and find your tools. Imagine your home totally organized. Well, it's time to turn your imagination into reality and call my friends at Closets by Design DFW. For over 20 years, Closets by Design has been making dreams come true for North Texas homeowners every single day. Backed by a sales force of over 30 experienced designers, Closets by Design builds all of their cabinets locally, supporting our community. Go to closets.closetsbydesign.com and check out the amazing specials and give them a call. 972-361-0010. That's 972-361-0010. Closets by Design. That's our new sponsor. We're so happy to have them. We can take these off now. Oh, because I don't like them. And not because they mess my hair up. So our next segment is Patel's Poonam's Pandemic Project. She has worked so hard on this, and she has, what are we going to talk about today?
Oh, I'm really excited about this one because it has been my saving grace in a way. There's a movie that I watched when I was a child called The Secret Garden, and this is an image from that movie. And I'm so obsessed with the gardens in that movie. And the reason why I want to talk about that today is because we all love our families, but every Zoom call I'm on for work or, just anytime I hear anybody talking about them being on Zoom calls, they express some sort of frustration of their loved ones getting on their nerves. And so one of the things that I've done is made my backyard, my outdoor space, an extension of my home. And what I want to talk about is how we, us Texas residents, can make that happen for us, considering how hot it can get and how many mosquitoes we have. And I want to share with you my best tips of the garden that I've created, the secret garden that I've created in my house, that you guys could do as well for yourselves. That way you can continue to live in a more harmonious way throughout the pandemic and still love your family without being frustrated with them. And so a couple of things that I've done in my backyard is, first of all, create these spaces that I could have phone call conversations and get on my webinars, as well as possibly eat my meals al fresco style without having to really be interrupted while I'm on my calls, or without having to eat on a dining table, which is actually people's office now, right? Because people are working from home.
I think you just don't want to share your food.
No. Actually, the meals in our house are fantastic. Well, I'll chat with you more about that later. But first, before we dive into these amazing ideas, we got to address mosquitoes and the sun. So first of all, if you want to try to help get rid of mosquitoes in an organic way, you can plant citronella, lemongrass, eucalyptus. There's a whole list of plants that you can grow to help not only minimize mosquitoes, but have fresh herbs to cook with and potentially save you some trips to the grocery store to help minimize COVID exposure. But then you can always use Dino-Trap, which is something that has been proven to be effective in helping keep mosquitoes away. Another quick tip I have for mosquitoes is to use Spartan. It's supposed to help keep mosquitoes at bay as well. And then real quickly, creating areas of shade. So if you have trees, great. If you don't, get us some what do you call them?
Umbrella.
Umbrella, thank you. Mm-hmm. Umbrella. So for fairly inexpensive, just mosquitoes and creating areas of shade, I think will really help you allow to extend your home out into your backyard. So with that said, I get it. It's hot in Texas. You're sweating. So maybe plan your day around the best times to hang out. So like the hottest times in Texas is, the sun's the highest point at noon. And although it's the highest at noon, doesn't necessarily mean that's the hottest time of the day. It takes some time, an hour or two, for the sun to heat the earth up, right? So I would say between 1 and 3:30 is your hottest time. So don't plan anything in terms of spending times outdoors during those times. But before lunch and after 5 is a perfect time to think about spending more times outdoors. So now I'm going to dive into my design tips of how to make it more livable, make your outdoor space more livable. So there's some cultures that, ancient cultures, Eastern cultures, that truly believe in consolidating all the elements. Like if you were to consolidate everything in the world, you would get these 5 elements of air, fire, earth, water. And this one says spirit, but some sources call it ether. I don't really know what that is, but we're going to talk about the other ones. So starting off with water. People love the water. People love fishing on the lake, spending time on the boat, spending time at the pool, going to the ocean. Why is that? The world consists of 75% water, and so are our bodies. So are most of the foods that we consume. So naturally, there's this natural affinity towards water. So one of my favorite things to do is to figure out ways to bring in water into your backyard, whether it's a bird bath or even a pool or a Japanese koi pond. I think all of these are great ways to connect with nature, bring in some of that zen into your backyard, and provide some much-needed calm in this pandemic, anxiety-injected environment that we're living in. So those are some of the quick tips of like how to bring more water.
Koi pond's a great idea because the fish will eat the mosquitoes.
Absolutely.
I'd love fish.
Yeah, with the bird baths, they have like a little motor, so it keeps the water going. And so it makes it nearly impossible for mosquitoes to sit, breed, and do that as well. And they're fairly small, so maintenance free in terms of having to pull the leaves out of the pump and things like that. I like that one. So in terms of bringing wind, but going back to the 5 elements and addressing the air, there's so many things that we could do in our outdoor space to bring air into, and enhance it and accentuate it. You could do wind chimes to help magnify the effect of wind. One of my favorite things is I have a lot of elephant ear plants, and I'll show you a picture at the very end. But elephant ears are a great way because they're shaped like a fan, and so when the wind blows, you can really see it and hear it and accentuate it. If you have trees, you naturally get that sound. I have 3 pecan trees and 2 other trees, I don't know what they are, but when the wind blows, I can really hear it and accentuate it. Again, going back to wind, I have this one, it's kind of like a hammock chair, and so when you sit on it, it reclines, and you're naturally looking up into the trees, and you can see the leaves, the wind blowing through the leaves, and then you can see how the sun sprinkles, like kind of almost like confetti or like a light show, the lights sprinkling through yeah, it's just amazing. So doing these things can really help bring more calm and zen to this pandemic lifestyle. I have a few photos that I want to share with you of ideas, of things that you could do to create a little phone booth. This photo shows how simple and easy it could be. You could go to Facebook Marketplace and buy a cute little tea table with 2 chairs. Pavers and pebbles you can easily get at your local Home Depot or Lowe's store. And the most expensive part about this project would probably be this trellis. If you go online, you could find them.
I thought it was the wine on the table.
or that. These arching trellises, they can range between $100 or $200. And then you just need to find your favorite plant, 2 vines that'll start growing on it to give you some shade and privacy. And you have your own little phone booth, outdoor phone booth, so you can speak as loud as you want. Especially sometimes the people that I work with are overseas, so I have people that I work with in Nigeria and Romania, and so sometimes you have to speak loudly on these international calls. And it's the perfect privacy little phone booth area, extension of your house. Get some privacy, peace, and some shade. And I think it just works so well for me. Another spot that you could create in your outdoor area to bring some more peace and zen into your life through the pandemic is creating meditation spaces. So, just bringing some blankets and pillows from your indoors to the outdoors, some slippers, a tray doesn't cost that much. This seating chair, you could probably find something fairly inexpensively online. And, just another extension of your house, an opportunity for you to get some me time, chill out, meditate, have a phone call, be on a webinar without having your family interrupt you. And lastly, I wanted to share with you the photo of the elephant ear plant, again, to just kind of show you the different kinds of plants that I like to see. You can see how easily they capture the wind, and just looking at it, I don't know, for me it works to just calm me down.
So maybe just find your favorite plant, or whatever it is, and have it out there, because it brings you joy and peace. Yeah.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to share with you is just the Pinterest page. It's fairly easy to collect ideas. You don't need to go out and find a designer like me. You just hop on Pinterest. You can hop on house.com, and you can just type in secret garden or outdoor ideas and just really begin to copy it. And there you have it. So last week we talked about how to purify the air. This week we're talking about how to make the outdoors an extension of your house, and we have more for you next week. And I'm so excited to share it with you. I'm going to turn it back over to Alex.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. That was awesome. What great ideas.
Thank you.
I love the phone booth idea. I think that's really cool, because I have to go to the street and people honk at me. And they all think my wife and I are having a fight. I don't know what that's about. Well, what a great show today. I really appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Poonam. You're always fun. I always love having you here, and that's great advice. Thank you, Randy Hargrave with Hargrave and Hargrave Foundation Repair, and Daniel Gorham with IBHS. We get to visit with them 2 or 3 times a year, and I always enjoy it. We learn so much from them. Thank you, Mr. Ziggy Becker, our engineer. And thank you, On Air Media, for allowing us in your studios. We always enjoy being here. You're wonderful people to work with. And mostly, thank you to all of our sponsors. And in particular, I want to say a special thank you this week to Closets by Design, DFW, for coming on board as one of our partners and teammates. And we're looking forward to having a long, wonderful relationship with you. Next week, we're going to talk about water conservation, and we're going to have another tip from Poonam, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good week.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to replace the recommendations of a hired professional. You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.